Obviously, medicine development takes a lot longer than software development, and for good reason.
Yes. We need mindless bodies that we can test against.
Sure.
How do you think that would go over?
Well, that's an interesting question. Yeah, could you legitimately grow a provably, like, if it didn't have a brain, like, I feel like people really couldn't object in a way. Like, there's
all right.
no suffering.
Hold on. Let's hot take this.
Welcome to the Deep Chat.
This is a true hot take.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be painful, but would it be ethical to grow a human body without a brain to test drugs on?
I'm ready. You want the hot take?
Yes, but you have to caveat that with it has to have enough function. Obviously, the brain does things to keep the body moving, so it has to have enough function. So it's really not lobotomizing or taking out. It's not taking out the whole brain either. It's not considered, it's brain dead. How about that? But the body is still living.
There might be a slippery slope there from the point of view of, like, you're right, like the pumping of the heart and all that is controlled by the brain. Could we make just that part of the brain? Like, I don't think anyone would consider that conscious or whatever. You could replace it with like a thermostat circuit kind of a thing. So let's maybe back away from that slippery slope, even if that invalidates the whole argument, and just say that...
well, let's say they weren't grown in a womb. They weren't grown in a womb even. Okay, we'll give you that. They weren't grown in a body. They were grown in a vat,
right.
An artificial womb.
Or on a tree.
Some
kind of way, yeah. Who knows?
It doesn't matter. This is a crazy question. But if you did that... and the body was functioning and you wanted to
right.
test drugs on it or test things on it, would it be ethical or moral to do so?
I mean, to me, it would be unethical not to do that. Because if you can guarantee me that husk is totally mindless, not consciousness, not alive in the way you and I are alive, but more alive in the way grass is alive, then the opportunity to provide organs, to do research, all that kind of stuff, it would be unbelievable to deny that to the human race.
All right. My hot take on that would be very similar to yours. I think that it would be a beneficial thing. I do think that it would divide the country in half.
Yeah, we already fight about abortion. We're definitely going to fight about husks.
We are calling that husks. Let's call them that. All right. So yes, the husks, as interesting as that would be, yes, I would think it would create a huge controversy, but I do think the benefits would outweigh the negatives. This goes back to these philosophical, really deep questions that we ask things about, like consciousness. So in a way, in order for this to be acceptable, you said it has to not be conscious like the way we are, right?
I would say not conscious in any animal-like way.
Right, in any animal-like way. Okay, so grass is like, and you compared it to grass. Well, there's some people that believe that, even trees are conscious, right? And there's some data, I guess, if I remember correctly, to suggest that they might be. So what is consciousness would be, again, the definition here would influence this directly.
Let's sidebar and resolve that real quick.
Yeah, I'm not sure we can. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that is the problem, right? Like what people will keep a person alive who's clinically brain dead for a year, more, who knows, as long as they want.
The family decides.
Right, because they might feel as though that person is still there and is going to come back.
Or is getting a pension.
Then you ask the question, what about the two people whose egg and sperm were used to fertilize and create this embryo that grew in the vat, this husk, right? Because it had to start from somebody.
Probably, but I don't think you get anywhere there because there's enough human beings, someone will volunteer that. There doesn't have to be a victimhood here.
No, there doesn't, but somebody will ask that question.
I mean, give me $100, I'll give you mine. Like, it's not that big a deal.
Right. 100? That's a little more than that, Kyle. Come on.
All right, I'll give you 10%. You get me what you can get.
But yeah, you're right. You would find people who would do it, and it wouldn't be a big issue. It doesn't mean that people won't ask that question, right? How are they going to feel about it? There will be people who do it and then regret it and say, oh my God, I had a baby. The same people who donate sperm and years later say, oh my gosh, somebody has my kid out there. Now I want to know. Right. So,
Right.
and how would you show how they don't suffer? What is the root of suffering and pain in the body? Can we demonstrate that that this husk does not feel those things? But generally, like I said, I agree with you that the value of it would be so much higher than the negatives. That just organ straight out the gate, just being able to harvest healthy quality organs would be an amazing use.
Yeah.
Now, testing drugs on them and in effect treating them like lab animals is similar to what we do with chimpanzees and mice, right? Everybody's okay with mice, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
For the most part, they're okay with mice, but they're not okay with chimpanzees. So this goes back to how strange we apply the rules in our society. Why is it okay to do more okay? I'm not going to say everyone universally agrees that it's okay to do testing on mice. Some people have an issue with it.
Correct.
But
broadly speaking, most people agree with that.
But if you started doing it on chimps, people would not be okay with it. The majority of people, I would say, would not be okay with it.
Yeah, I agree. Yep, I'm one of them.
There's some ick factor there for me, right?
For sure.
But
Yep.
it's okay with mice. So it's strange if you look at it objectively, how we hierarchy these things. It seems as though we're placing a value on, we're quantifying the consciousness level of something and then ranking it to say whether or not it would be acceptable to do testing on it. So a chimpanzee, straight out the gate, most people would say it's more conscious. Whereas a mouse, they would say, they're just dumb little mice anyway. But
Right.
some people might look at an octopus and have no problem with it, right? People eat octopuses alive.
Yeah, that's incredibly sad.
But octopuses are one of the smartest things on Earth, is
Yeah.
my understanding.
Yeah, incredibly smart and very exotic compared to us. So you can't just like chimps. You could be like, oh, that's kind of our
Right.
cousin. But dolphins, octopi or octopuses, yeah.
Yeah, you look at a chimp in the eye and you have an emotional connection to it just due to the similarity that we have with humans. And everybody knows that we descend from some earlier species that branched off, right? So, oh, wow. You
Yeah.
know, we're related in some way. But I find that interesting because, if you take this idea of experimenting on husks, I'm not sure the majority of people would be okay with it, even if it was a husk. Because would people be okay if we did that with a chimp? What if we went in and took a chimp and we removed all portions of its brain that were, pain-inducing, etc., and we said, no, this thing's fine. We're going to do some testing on it. I don't think people would raise their hand and say, yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah. But I think the inflection point there is that people aren't cool with it because it was alive and it was sentient and conscious. So what I think we're saying is that if something never was, it just grew, it was a husk, it never had the chance to be conscious, then that's okay, right? So if we could grow chimps, and by the way, I'm unpacking this live, so this is why it might be messy, but if we had chimps.
Well, if we could grow a body, why would we grow the chimp? Just grow the Homo sapien, which is what we need.
That's true, but I'm just trying to do the thought experiment of would people be more or less okay with things, and where do we stand in today's society, right? If you could today, right now, grow a chimp in a vat with no actual brain, just its whole limbic system and the ability to, self-regulate itself, regulate itself, and stay alive and breathe, etc. You'd feed it intravenously. Would people be okay with that? I think they'd be creeped out, and I think
Yeah, for sure.
I'm a little creeped out by it, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't say that the work was worth it, because I do think the work is worth it. Now, ideally, if we could just grow an organ, that would be even better.
Where's the line then? Like, let's say the thing you could grow just a kidney in a vat. Just a piece of a human being. I feel like, without a doubt, there'd be less controversy. There'd be some, of course. Would there be legitimate controversy? I'm not even sure.
No, it all comes down to the fact that there's a brain and a body.
Okay.
And what we're saying is, it seems like that's when you pay attention to how you feel, when you say, well, grow an organ, and we're going to put it in people. Zero ick factor. I don't think most people would have a problem with that. We're going to grow a whole body without a brain.
All right, well, let's do an inductive proof here, you and I. We agree people won't care if we grow a kidney, so if you're growing a kidney, you should just do 2 at the same time, right? It makes sense to do a batch. While you're in there, why don't you do some lungs and a liver? Heck, maybe we add from the waist down. At what point do people start to object? How far away do we have to stay from the brain and then, the spinal cord?
No, I agree. This is the thought experiment. This is the humor, in a way, in this whole, the way that we triage and organize what's right and what's not within our society, right? What if you just grew everything except the head and you had a computer control the nervous system? Just thought experiment, right? What is that? Is that okay? It doesn't have a head. That feels okay to me. It feels better than if it had a head with no brain.
Yeah,
isn't that strange?
Has no head, never had a head.
That's strange. It's a strange feeling, right? I'm okay with that. I'm very much okay with that, but not at,
for sure.
The ick factor is a little higher when it has a head with no brain.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ick factor is, I don't know if you're squeamish around blood or surgery videos or something, but you're aware people are. If you're squeamish around that, it can only be worse when you think of, this green goop and the thing is submerged in it and it's bubbling for some reason, like in a movie when there's a thing in a vat. There is something a little like uncomfortable, distasteful about it, like when you hit your funny bone wrong.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about ick as in gross. I'm talking about ick as in feels wrong, right? That's my perspective. Is if you pay attention to the feeling you get when we pose these questions, you can get a sense of how you would respond if it was real, right?
Yeah,
and that's where I feel like the head. The chopping off point is the head. When it has a head, I feel a little bit more questionable as to whether or not we should grow it, right? If it has the head. If it didn't have a head and we could keep it alive and we could do drug tests on it, etc. Yeah. I don't know, it feels totally different. It feels like a husk. But when you add the head, it doesn't feel like a husk. It's really weird. So it doesn't make sense.
So you're willing to help people who have liver disease, kidney disease, bad lungs, but you are wholly unconcerned with people who might want eyes or new ocular nerves or things like that then?
Although that is a great example of the goofiness and the way in which we think emotionally, that's not my belief. I'm just saying I'm paying attention.
The eyes are practically connected to the brain.
Yeah, right. I mean, the eyes are very important too. Imagine we grow eyes to swap those into someone else. I mean, it's a big deal.
If they want them, yeah.
People need them. We can't do that yet, but the harvesting part of it. So, when I think about it objectively, I'm fine with everything. When I start to unpack it, there's the edges that I'm talking about. I like to find the edges. And that's an interesting edge, is head or no head.
Yeah, I think technology is going to move faster than culture here. We're going to get to a point where some of this stuff steps out of science fiction into science possibility, but it's such a... Like earlier, the kidneys was a good go-to, I think. Like, who would object to that? And with the same logic, you shouldn't object to growing eyeballs, but... Who's going to want to work at an eyeball growing factory? Can you imagine walking into that room? I don't even want to think about it.
I think that they would probably kind of put shutters on all the vats that they're growing them in.
Something.
It would be very strange.
Get a lot of those like sleep masks and put them in front.
It'd be awful, but you're right.
But that is entirely arbitrary. That's culture.
Right. And I do think you're right. Technology will outpace our ability to adapt as a culture. I mean, look at some of the religious things that still happen. Still.
Right. Yeah.
And we have, technological advancement has barely begun to accelerate compared to where it's going to. In the next 100 years, there will be such rapid change that will make religion have to question itself yet more, ethics and morals, etc. And if we ever touch base with aliens or find out that there are aliens, oh my gosh, can you imagine the reevaluation of religion?
I don't know. I don't think it's as a stair-step a thing as you're saying. Like the Catholic Church has hinted at like covering their bases a couple times, being like, yeah, sure, there's other people out there and God's looking after them also. You know, like if tomorrow it was proven to me that the halting problem was not what I thought it was, I would stop being a computer scientist. That's fundamental. But there are people who find ways to reconcile utterly incorrect things with their religion. Like, the more modern a religion is, the easier this is. Like, Joseph Smith made some very testable and checkable claims that do not pan out, yet Mormonism is still a big and, I think, growing faith. So people find a way to reconcile all that.
Yes, they do. That's true. They reconcile it, but there's going to be a moment, I think, where you just can't reconcile it anymore.
Well, I don't think people hit that moment. I think they're on a different leg of the journey. You know, if you say like you identify as Catholic or whatever it is, you can't be, I guess, all on board. Everyone they pick and choose buffet style what part of it they are. And even people who identify culturally as a religion over like some more philosophical thing.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I tend to agree.
I mean, give any religious person a quiz on their religion, they will fail. Guaranteed.
Right, for the most part, 90%, I would say.
They don't know the facts. Not at all.
I tend to agree with you. You're right, and that's a good point, that religion might not be the, like, stair step, as you said. What maybe is more of a question of what we'll accept in society when we start being able to superpower people, not superpowered per se, but we start to be able to change the eye color of the kid that we want, and we start to be able to make sure that they're high IQ'd or that they grow muscle easily and they'll never be fat, and you know, all these different things. And we can give designer drugs that optimize your brain function, and who gets those and who doesn't. And
yeah, there's a cost to producing them.
Right. So I think that you're right, that those are the areas that are probably going to create more controversy than religion, because religion is very good. People who are very religious are very good at looking away from things that might be contradictory to the religion. They're in the religion because it's useful and it's a tool for them, for their lives, and they don't really care if it's controversial or, well, if the evidence suggests otherwise, because it's good for them. It helps them in life. And okay, I'm okay with that too.
Yeah. And religions evolve, just like political parties too. People like to reflect on like, oh, if this person were around today, that president would have been the other party, that kind of stuff. Religions change dramatically over the course of history also.
Yep. Well, all right. That was an interesting one. I don't know. Who do you have on to hot take that one? Somebody who understands biology and or a biological ethicist. I wonder if there is such a thing.
Yeah. Some sort of ethicist type person has probably formalized this in some kind of trolley problem type version that is maybe similar to our clumsy attempts at stuff like that today. Maybe there's interesting scholarship on these ideas.